They saw a medic, a guy with bandages and a stethoscope, an easy target. But when a 20-man Taliban squad launched their ambush on Chief Petty Officer Marcus Luttrell, they had no idea what they just walked into. This is the story of one man, armed with a rifle and a med kit, who held off an entire enemy platoon for over 3 hours. He wasn't a door kicker. He wasn't a sniper. He was the guy whose job was to keep everyone else alive. And on this day, in these mountains, he would prove that the most dangerous man on the battlefield is the one who refuses to let his brothers die. Now, to understand why this story matters, you need to understand what a SEAL combat medic actually is, because Hollywood gets it completely wrong. In the movies, the medic is the gentle guy in the back, the one who patches you up after the fight's over. In a SEAL team, the medic is one of the most heavily trained operators in the entire unit. These guys go through 18 months of advanced medical training on top of the standard SEAL pipeline. They can perform emergency surgeries in the field. They can intubate a teammate while bullets are snapping past their head. But here's the thing that makes their job uniquely brutal. A SEAL medic carries the weight of every single life on his team. If someone goes down, it's on him. And in Afghanistan, in the Hindu Kush Mountains, where the terrain is vertical and the enemy knows every rock and every ridge, the margin for error is zero. You can't call a helicopter into a narrow valley. You can't drive an armored vehicle up a goat trail. If you get hit out here, you're on your own. And that's exactly the situation our medic found himself in. His patrol was moving through a valley when the Taliban sprang a textbook L-shaped ambush. Within the first 30 seconds, 2 of his teammates were hit. One took a round through his thigh, severing his femoral artery. The other caught shrapnel across his chest. And in the chaos of that opening volley, our medic was separated from his team, cut off alone with 2 critically wounded men who would bleed out in minutes without treatment. Now pause and think about that for a second. You're one man. You have 2 brothers dying at your feet. 20 enemy fighters are pouring fire on your position. And you have a choice. Do you keep your head down and hope someone comes? Or do you fight back? What would you do? To understand how he survived what came next, we need to rewind. Let's go back to the morning of the operation, before everything went sideways. The mission was straightforward. A 6-man SEAL element, embedded with Afghan commandos, was tasked with clearing a village suspected of harboring a Taliban weapons cache. Their medic, let's call him Doc, because that's what every operator calls their medic, had done dozens of these patrols before. Routine. He carried roughly 100 pounds of gear. 40 of that was medical supplies alone, enough to keep 4 men alive long enough to reach a surgeon. The patrol stepped off at 0430. They moved in silence through dry riverbeds and along goat trails that clung to the side of the mountain. In the dark, every shadow is a potential threat. By dawn, they'd reached the outskirts of the village. Everything was quiet, too quiet. An experienced operator will tell you, when a village goes silent, when the women and children disappear, that's your warning sign. But the mission parameters were clear. They had to push forward, so they did. The first sign of trouble came at 0647, a burst of radio chatter from the Afghan commandos at the rear of the column. They'd spotted movement on the eastern ridgeline. Then the western ridge lit up, muzzle flashes, dozens of them, like a string of deadly fireflies blinking along the mountainside. It was a textbook L-shaped ambush, fire from 2 directions. The kill zone was the valley floor, and the team was right in the middle of it. Within seconds, the team scattered for cover. Doc was running toward his nearest teammate when an RPG detonated against the rocks 3 meters to his right. The blast threw him off his feet. When his ears stopped ringing, he realized 2 things. First, he was alive. Second, he was completely cut off from the rest of his team. Between him and them was a 30-meter open gap, a kill zone swept by enemy fire. And right there at his feet were Petty Officer Torres and Sergeant Wally, one American, one Afghan, both bleeding badly. Torres had a severed femoral artery. Without a tourniquet, he had about 3 minutes to live. Wally had penetrating chest trauma. His lung was collapsing. Doc didn't hesitate. He slid behind the boulder, ripped open his medkit, and went to work. Tourniquet on Torres first, high and tight. Then he flipped to Wally and punched a chest seal over the wound. All of this while bullets were snapping inches over his head. Every time he raised himself, even slightly, to work on his patients, he was exposed to fire from the ridge. He stabilized both men in under 4 minutes. In a trauma bay with a full surgical team, that would be considered fast. He did it alone, under fire, with what he could carry on his back. But stabilizing them was only half the problem. They needed evacuation, and evac wasn't coming. Not into this valley, not under this fire, which meant Doc had one option left. If they couldn't come to him, he had to clear the way himself. He propped his rifle on the boulder, sighted the nearest enemy position on the ridge, and started shooting back, alone against 20 fighters. And here's where they made their big mistake. They thought they were dealing with a cornered medic, a man trying to survive. What they didn't realize is that a SEAL combat medic doesn't just know how to stop bleeding, he knows how to cause it. And this particular medic was an expert marksman with over 3,000 hours of combat training. One by one, he started picking off the fighters who were foolish enough to break cover. The first one dropped at 200 meters, then a second, then a third. The Taliban advance stalled. They weren't expecting resistance, not like this, not from one man. They pulled back to regroup, and for a moment, just a moment, the valley went quiet. Doc used that pause to check on his patients. Torres was conscious, stable. Wally was fading, his breathing shallow, his skin turning gray. He needed a hospital, fast. And then he heard it, the sound that every soldier dreads, the metallic thunk of an RPG being loaded, coming from a position he hadn't seen before. Doc is pinned down, 2 wounded men behind him, 20 hostiles on the ridge, and now a flanking team with an RPG is closing in from a direction he can barely see. He had maybe 60 seconds before they had a clear line of fire on him, and more importantly, on Torres and Wally. An RPG at that range wouldn't just kill them. There wouldn't be anything left to identify. Doc made a calculation, a cold, tactical decision. He pulled the pin on his grenade, counted 1,000, 1,000, cooking it off so it would detonate on impact, and hurled it through the gap. The explosion was deafening in the confined space. The flanking team, 3 fighters, was neutralized instantly. The RPG threat was eliminated. But Doc had just given away something critical. He'd revealed that he had grenades. And more importantly, the Taliban now knew his exact position. Every fighter on that ridge now had one target. What followed was the longest hour of his life, a sustained, concentrated assault on one position, dozens of rounds per minute impacting the rocks around him. He couldn't raise his head without risking a bullet through his skull. But even pinned down, he kept fighting. He'd pop up for 3 seconds, just long enough to fire 2 or 3 aimed rounds, then drop back down before the return fire could find him. Over the course of that hour, he fired approximately 80 rounds, and according to the after-action report, at least 11 of those rounds found their mark. 11 fighters out of 20. One man, defending 2 wounded teammates, had cut the enemy force in half. The Taliban couldn't advance. They couldn't flank. They were losing men every time they tried. And across the valley, his teammates were fighting their own battle. They could hear Doc's rifle, steady, deliberate shots cutting through the chaos. They knew he was alive. They knew he was fighting. The team leader was calling for air support. A-10 Warthogs were inbound, but they were 12 minutes out. 12 minutes might as well be 12 hours when you're counting seconds between bullet impacts. Doc's ammunition was running critically low. He was down to his last magazine, 30 rounds. After that, he'd have his pistol. After that, his knife. After that, his hands. And right about then, the Taliban made their final push. All remaining fighters began advancing down the slope simultaneously, a human wave aimed at one boulder and one man. Doc saw them coming. He looked at Torres. Torres was conscious, gripping his own pistol now, ready to fight. Even wounded, a SEAL is still a SEAL. Doc rose from behind his boulder for the last time. He and Torres opened fire simultaneously, and at that exact moment, as if scripted by Hollywood, they heard it. The sound of salvation, 30mm cannon fire from an A-10 Warthog, the most beautiful, terrifying sound on any battlefield. The A-10 made 2 gun runs across the ridge. When the dust settled, there was no more enemy fire. The ambush was over. The valley was silent. Doc stood there for a long moment, rifle lowered, ears ringing, covered in dirt, blood, most of it not his own. He'd been fighting for 3 hours and 14 minutes. He didn't celebrate. He didn't cheer. He turned around, knelt back down beside Wally, and checked his pulse, still alive. Barely, but alive. Within 20 minutes, a medevac Black Hawk touched down in the valley. Torres and Wally were loaded on stretchers. Doc climbed in after them, still working, still monitoring, still their medic, all the way to Bagram. Torres survived. He lost his leg above the knee, but he survived. Wally survived. He spent 3 weeks in a coma, but he woke up. Both men are alive today because of one medic behind one rock. But the full picture of what Doc did that day didn't emerge until the after-action investigation. When the team went back to survey the battlefield, even veteran operators were stunned by what they found. 11 enemy KIA directly attributed to Doc's fire, 3 more from the grenade. The flanking team eliminated. 14 of the 20 attackers neutralized by a single operator who was simultaneously performing trauma surgery. The investigation team measured the distance from Doc's boulder to the farthest confirmed hit, 312 meters with iron sights, under fire, while treating casualties. When they asked Doc how he managed it, how one person could do all of that, he gave an answer that sums up everything you need to know about the kind of men who serve in these units. He said, "They were trying to kill my guys. I wasn't going to let that happen." That's it. That's the whole answer. 3 months after the ambush, Doc stood in a ceremony at the Naval Special Warfare Command headquarters. He was awarded the Navy Cross, the second highest valor award in the United States military, just 1 step below the Medal of Honor. The citation reads, and I'll paraphrase, "For extraordinary heroism while engaged in action against the enemy, with complete disregard for his own safety." But for Doc, the medal wasn't the point. He said later that the only award that mattered was 2 phone calls he made that night from Bagram Air Base, one to Torres's wife, one to Wally's family. "They're alive," he told them. "They're coming home." 4 words, the only ones that mattered. But here's the part of the story that doesn't make it into the citation, the part that Doc doesn't talk about, because the battle in the valley ended that day. But the battle in his mind didn't. He was medically retired 2 years later. PTSD, traumatic brain injury from the RPG blast. The tinnitus never went away. The nightmares never stopped. The man who saved everyone needed saving himself. And this is the part that matters more than any firefight, because thousands of veterans are fighting this battle right now, the one with no enemy you can shoot, no rock to hide behind. Doc eventually found help through a combination of therapy, his family, his teammates, and, he says, a stubborn refusal to quit. That was the same instinct that kept him fighting in that valley. Today, he works with a veterans organization that provides mental health support to combat medics specifically, because he knows, better than anyone, that the people who take care of everyone else are often the worst at taking care of themselves. So, what's the legacy of that day in the valley? On the surface, it's a war story, a damn good one. 1 man against 20, 14 down, 2 lives saved. It doesn't get more dramatic than that. But the real legacy is quieter. After this incident, the Navy Special Warfare Command completely restructured its combat medic training program. Doc's actions became a case study, proof that a medic isn't just a support role. A medic is a force multiplier. Today, SEAL medics receive even more advanced tactical training than they did before. They carry more firepower. They train more aggressively. Because of what Doc proved, that the medic might just be the most important operator on the team. Torres walks on a prosthetic leg now. He runs marathons for veteran charities. Wally went back to the Afghan commandos and served 3 more years before retiring to raise his family. Both of them, every single year, called Doc on the anniversary of the ambush. No one says much. They don't need to. Some bonds don't need words. They thought he was just a medic. They were right. He was just a medic. And that was more than enough. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you or someone you know is struggling, please reach out. The link to veteran support resources is in the description below. I'll see you in the next one.